Brad Holmes has been making trips down south, and there's a specific program that keeps showing up on the Lions scouting itinerary. Auburn, multiple visits, multiple games. And there's one name on that offensive line that could be the answer to a problem the Lions didn't even know they had until this season exposed it. This is Lions News Fan Report, your destination for breaking news, insider updates, and all the rumors surrounding our Detroit Lions. I'm bringing you exclusive analysis on a potential draft target that's flying under the radar but could end up being one of the most important picks the Lions make this offseason. Let me paint a picture for you right now. The Lions' offensive line, which has been the foundation of everything this team does, has shown some cracks this season. Not catastrophic failures, but enough to make Brad Holmes and the coaching staff realize that depth and future planning at the tackle position is absolutely critical. We've seen what happens when you don't have quality tackles protecting your quarterback. We've seen how quickly an offense can fall apart when the edges aren't secured, and that's why what I'm about to tell you matters so much for the future of this franchise. The Lions have invested heavily in their offensive line over the years, and rightfully so. You build from the trenches, that's football 101. But here's the reality that every NFL team faces. Offensive linemen get older, contracts expire, injuries happen, and suddenly you're scrambling to find replacements. The smart teams, the teams that sustain success, they're always thinking 2 or 3 years ahead. They're always looking for the next guy before they desperately need him. And that's exactly what the Lions are doing right now with their scouting focus on Auburn. Now, before I get into the specific player I want to talk about, let me give you some context about why Auburn matters to the Lions' draft strategy. The Tigers have historically produced quality offensive linemen. It's a program known for developing big, physical, SEC-tested players who understand what it means to play in the trenches against elite competition week in and week out. When Brad Holmes sends scouts to Auburn multiple times in a season, that's not a coincidence. That's targeted evaluation. That's the Lions identifying players who fit their system and their culture. And there was one player on that Auburn offensive line who was generating significant draft buzz earlier in the process. Connor Lew. He was projected to be a potential early-round pick, a guy who could come in and contribute immediately at the NFL level. But then disaster struck. Torn ACL, season over, draft stock completely up in the air. And suddenly the Lions had to pivot their evaluation to the next best thing on that Auburn offensive line. That brings us to Xavier Chaplain. Chaplain is a tackle who has been grinding away on that Auburn line, getting better each year, developing his technique, and showing the kind of traits that NFL teams covet in offensive linemen. He's not the flashiest name in this draft class. He's not going to generate the same headlines as some of the premier tackles who will go in the first round. But here's what he is. He's a developmental prospect with legitimate starting potential at left tackle after some coaching and refinement. And for a team like the Lions picking in the middle rounds, that's exactly the kind of value you're looking for. Let me tell you why Chaplain makes sense for Detroit specifically. The Lions are in an interesting situation with their tackle depth. Taylor Decker has been solid, but he's not getting any younger. Penei Sewell is a stud on the right side, one of the best in the league. But beyond those two, there are questions. Giovanni Manu was supposed to be that developmental tackle who could eventually step into a starting role. The Lions invested a draft pick in him with the hope that he would grow into a reliable backup and potential future starter. But we still don't know if Manu is ever going to materialize into what the Lions hoped he would be. That uncertainty is exactly why Xavier Chaplain enters the conversation. He represents a hedge against Manu not developing, and he represents insurance for the future of the tackle position in Detroit. You draft Chaplain in the mid-rounds, you bring him in to compete, you let him develop behind your established starters, and you see if he can become that left tackle of the future. The upside is there. The physical tools are there. It's about refinement and coaching, two things the Lions have proven they can provide. Now let's talk about what Chaplain brings to the table from a skill set perspective. He's got good size for the position, which is non-negotiable at the NFL level. You can't teach height and length, and Chaplain has enough of both to handle edge rushers. His footwork needs work, which is typical for mid-round tackle prospects. Very few guys come out of college with perfect technique, but the foundation is there. He shows the ability to mirror pass rushers, he understands hand placement, and he plays with the kind of physicality that translates to the NFL. In the run game, Chaplain shows promise as well. He's not a mauler who's going to consistently drive defenders off the line of scrimmage, but he's functional. He understands angles, he can reach block on outside zone plays, and he's willing to work to the second level. For a Lions offense that relies heavily on the run game to set up play action, having tackles who can execute those zone schemes is crucial. Chaplain fits that mold, and with proper coaching from Hank Fraley and the offensive line staff, he could develop into a really solid run blocker. The development timeline is important to consider here. The Lions don't need Chaplain to start immediately. They've got their starting tackles locked in for the foreseeable future. What they need is a player who can come in, learn the system, work on his technique, and be ready to contribute when called upon. That could be as a backup in year 1, as a swing tackle in year 2, and potentially as a starter by year 3 if everything develops according to plan. That's a reasonable and realistic development curve for a mid-round tackle prospect. And here's something else that matters. The Lions have been to Auburn multiple times this season. That's not just casual observation. That's intensive evaluation. They're watching practice. They're talking to coaches. They're getting a feel for the character and work ethic of these players. When you invest that much time and resources into scouting a specific program, you're looking for players who fit your culture. The Lions want tough, physical, team-first players who love football. Everything I've seen suggests Chaplain fits that profile. Let me also address the draft capital situation. The Lions are likely going to be picking in the mid to late teens in the first round, and they'll have picks scattered throughout the rest of the draft. Chaplain is projected to go somewhere in the 3rd to 4th round range, which is right in that sweet spot where the Lions could target him. You're not reaching for him in the 2nd round, but you're also not waiting so long that another team snatches him up. The value proposition makes sense at that point in the draft. Think about how Brad Holmes has approached building this roster. He's been aggressive when he needs to be, trading up for players like Jamison Williams when he sees elite talent. But he's also been patient and strategic in the middle rounds, finding guys like Sam Laporta who turned into immediate contributors. Chaplain would fall into that second category. A calculated mid-round pick with upside who could develop into a long-term starter. That's exactly the kind of draft strategy that has made Holmes one of the best general managers in the league. The offensive line is the foundation of everything the Lions want to do offensively. Jared Goff needs time to throw. The run game needs holes to operate. The play-action game needs protection to develop. None of that works without quality offensive line play, and while the Lions have invested heavily in that area, you can never have too much depth or too many developmental prospects at tackle. Injuries happen, as we've seen this season. Performance declines happen. You need a constant pipeline of talent, and Chaplain represents a smart addition to that pipeline. I also want to talk about the competition aspect. If the Lions draft Chaplain, he's going to push Giovanni Manu. He's going to compete for a roster spot. He's going to force everyone in that tackle room to elevate their game. That's healthy. That's how you build depth. That's how you ensure that when injuries inevitably happen, you're not scrambling to sign street free agents or trade for expensive veterans. You got guys ready to step in because they've been developing in your system. The Auburn connection is real, and it's something Lions fans should be paying attention to. When your team makes multiple scouting trips to a specific program, when they're clearly targeting players from that school, it usually results in a draft pick. Connor Lew's injury changed the calculus, but it didn't change the Lions' interest in Auburn's offensive line. Xavier Chaplain is the next man up on that evaluation list, And I would be surprised if the Lions don't seriously consider him when they're on the clock in the middle rounds. Here's what I think happens. The Lions address other needs in the first couple of rounds. Maybe edge rusher and interior offensive line. Then, when they get to that third or fourth round pick, they look at the board and see Xavier Chaplain still available. They've done the homework. They've watched the tape. They've talked to the coaches. They know he fits what they're building. And they pull the trigger. They add a developmental tackle who can grow into a starting role and provide long-term security at one of the most important positions on the field. The beauty of this pick is that it doesn't need to pay off immediately. The Lions have time to develop Chaplain. They can bring him along slowly, let him learn from Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell, and gradually increase his role as he's ready for it. That's the ideal scenario for a mid-round offensive lineman. You're not throwing him into the fire immediately, but you're investing in the future of the position. That's smart roster management, and it's exactly what championship organizations do. So when you're watching the draft this year, and the Lions are on the clock in the middle rounds, don't be surprised if you hear the name Xavier Chaplain called. Don't be surprised if Brad Holmes executes the plan he's been formulating through all those Auburn scouting trips. And don't be surprised if, 2 or 3 years from now, Chaplain is starting at left tackle, and we're all talking about what a great value pick he was. That's how you sustain success in the NFL. That's how you build a championship roster. You identify talent, you develop it, and you always stay ahead of your needs. Now I want to hear from you, Lions fans. What do you think about Xavier Chaplain as a potential mid-round target? Do you trust the Lions' evaluation of Auburn's offensive line? Would you rather see them address tackle depth in the draft or through free agency? And what do you think about Giovanni Manu's development so far? Drop your comments below because I love hearing your perspectives on how the Lions should approach building this roster. If you found this analysis valuable, if you appreciate the insider look at potential draft targets, make sure you smash that like button. Subscribe to Lions News Fan Report if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. We're bringing you the latest news, the deepest analysis, and everything you need to stay connected with your Detroit Lions. Thanks for watching, and as always, let's go Lions!